Today, guys, we have with us Jennifer Lorson from CLC2 and her colleague, case manager Marissa Rodriguez. I work with Jen in Department 413. She's changed the way that I approach my cases when I have former foster parents now as parents in the dependency system. So today we're going to hear from her about different services that are available to those special types of parents and how we could do a better job arguing reasonable services issues, and then also linking our clients with the best services for housing and other issues. And so I'll let Jen take over.
So I've been in dependency 25 years. I've represented parents in Orange County, also in Los Angeles. Then I represented children, and now mostly, almost 90% of my caseload is children or young teen parenting, young teens that are parenting. Marissa was a peer advocate in the Children's Law Center when I first met her. She is now currently a what we call TAY case manager. That's Transitional Age Youth Case Manager. So she's promoted up. We've been co-workers for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years now. She is one of the best, and that's why I asked her if she would co-present with me. So without anything else, let's get started. So how many of you guys have ever represented children? Anybody? I know Miss Amy. I know you have. Any of you have any prior foster youth that are on your caseload right now that are parents? You might be surprised how many of your kids actually are, so let's go through it. All right, we titled it Multigenerational Representation because obviously we see people coming through the system, and it's usually grandma, mom, their kids, great-grandma, and you see this pattern coming through. The whole idea of what we're doing now is trying to stop that cycle. And one of the ways to try to stop that cycle is to bring money into the system to try to help young youth between the ages of 18 and 21 make it. All right, goals. The importance of identifying prior court-involved youth. Thank you. Accessing the unique services. We're going to discuss Youth Development Services Division through DCFS, ILP, THP. You're going to learn that there's a whole lot of acronyms. You thought you had a lot regularly in dependency, get ready. TAY takes it to a all new level. So YDS, Youth Development Services, ILP, Independent Living Program, THP, Transitional Housing Programs, LASA, Los Angeles Housing Services, something, Authority, thank you. DMH, obviously Department of Mental Health. You're going to learn about extended foster care, reentry, and all the housing options for that. Former court dependents, what's available for them if they are parenting. And a little bit about community partners. We're going to try to do that all in an hour. You guys ready? Yeah, let's do it. Terms. We went ahead and stuck in the terms for you all, so you guys can refer back to them later. The ones that you're going to hear the most today are TAY, Transitional Age Youth, NMD, Non-Minor Dependent, YDS, Youth Development Services, and ILP, Independent Living Program, and Extended Foster Care. Those are the ones you're going to hear the most today. You'll refer back to them if you need them. If I go too fast, stop me. All right, I tend to talk fast.
And if we throw out an acronym that is not listed here, you've never heard, ask us, we'll explain it to you.
All right. The first thing that we want to cover is, has your client ever experienced the system?
Yeah, so we want to get you guys in the habit of asking this question to your clients because more than likely the chances are that they've been involved. So some important questions to ask is, have you been to the court, to this court yourself? Were you a prior dependent? Were you involved in the juvenile dependency delinquency system? Were you living with other relatives? Were you adopted? Just some of those questions. And if the answer is yes, when were you returned home? Under what circumstances? And that'll give you an idea of whether or not these youth were prior dependents and if they qualify for some of the services that we're going to discuss later.
Really important on this is make sure you ask about delinquency as well as juvenile dependency. We have also found that a lot of our clients had no idea that they were in the system. So when you ask these questions, really be attuned to the idea. Did you grow up with your mom and dad? That's a great way to start it. When did you get back with your mom and dad? Really great questions to ask because a lot of times they had no idea that the court was involved. All right, we're talking not about probate. It has to be through here. And the two things, obviously, you deal with these clients all the time, but I'm going to remind you, trauma, really huge when you're dealing with our clients. Fight, flight, freeze are going to be the 3 things you're going to see a lot with them. Freeze, you'll know you have a freeze when you've explained everything to them and they have no idea what you just talked to them about. Fight, they're going to cuss you out. You know this, you guys get these trainings all the time, but our clients are particularly susceptible to this. And the other thing is always check for conflicts. The minute you hear that the child might not have been part of or the parent now has not been part of the court system, check for conflicts. Inevitably, I usually find that somebody from one of the ladles was on it or one of your bosses before ladle existed. So always check for conflicts. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but just reminder, because I've gone on to a few of my cases and found that there were a lot of conflicts because nobody checked, because nobody realized the mother was part of the system. All right.
So the reason for the questions is to see whether or not these former dependents qualify for some extra funding and services. We separated here in 2 categories, one of them being youth development services, and there's the IOP program under that umbrella, and transitional housing, several transitional housing programs under that umbrella. And then on the separate side is extended foster care funding. In some cases, based off of the answers or questions that the youth provide, they may be eligible for both, they may just be eligible for one of them, and then we'll kind of explain the details of how that's going to happen in future slides. Extended foster care, basically, that provides funding up until the age of 21. It's important for either one of these services that the youth does have a transitional independent living plan. This is super important in order for them to get funding, whether that's extended foster care, whether that's through ILP. They need to have a TILP where they set goals for the next 6 months, and hopefully one of those goals is involved with the reason why they're trying to get funding.
So when we're talking about this, I want you to know that we're talking about children. For reentry, we're talking about youth up through the age of 21. For ILP, we're talking about youth that experience foster care through the age of 24. So it opens up a lot of services. So again, reentry, think 20, it's somebody that's coming in for extended foster care up through the age of 21, 21st birthday. But ILP, through youth development services, they might be eligible for services through the age of 24, which is housing. So just keep this in your mind when you're talking about it.
Actually, it went up to 25 now. The recent bill allowed youth to be in traditional housing up to age 25 as well.
So we need to be focused on our younger parent clients.
Definitely. Right.
So even if they had been in the system, but now they're 29, they're not going to have access to services, correct?
The things you want to look at for that are going to be, okay, so the question was what services would they have access to if they came through system. The other things that we're going to talk about later that also might be available is, even though they might not be eligible for our services through DCFS, there's a huge, and I attached it, I think Jacqueline gave it to you guys, there's an attachment of what we call TAG resources. But a lot of those resources also provide supportive services for people leaving jail that are coming out of whatever, violence, gangs. So keeping your eyes open for a person who came through the system might make other doors open that we haven't thought about, because a lot of the funding that came through for these programs was specifically geared for somebody who came through the system. So also FAFSA for college. There's a whole other things that we might be able to get them into, but usually think 25 and under.
Thank you.
But there are a lot of community partners that are realizing that need for services for youth that are older, so there's a lot that are coming up. But for the most part, everybody has their own eligibility criteria, and for the most part, services end at 25, 26 is where you're going to get the most for former foster youth.
I have a question. For the re-entry with the TILP, our clients, obviously, we don't have access to their file when they were a youth. How did they just petition for the re-entry and then?
So we're going to talk about reentry,
Okay.
so why don't we'll get to it and then
We
we'll kind of.
won't have, as our
Right.
clients, access to any of this.
Right.
We'll cover reentry a little bit later.
Okay.
As far as services from youth development services, like we said, there's transitional housing, I'll walk through that. There's also ILP general services where they can attend one of the teen clubs, which are meetings held at different areas throughout LA County where they get information about job opportunities. They even have like, what do you call those, like tournaments for sports, just different activities for the youth to engage in. There's also the Individualized Transition Skills Program, ITSP for short, where they get a like a coach, a one-on-one mentor that works with them for about a year or two, and they help them work on whatever goals, whatever it is that they're trying to work on through their time in foster care.
On a side note, when we're talking reasonable services, because Jacqueline has told me to remind you guys, when we're talking reasonable services, you have a client that came through the system, and you realize that that client is now ILP eligible. okay? I want you to know, the very first time we hosted a meeting with DCFS at the table, so we had this meeting of people that engaged age youth. And it was the largest first attended meeting in the courthouse. And what was the most amazing part of that is the most requested meetings amongst the people that were in there when we said meet each other is DCFS social workers ran across the table, I'm not kidding, ran across the table to the ILP workers. Think about this, they're all in the same office. Ran across the table and they're like, who are you and what do you do? So when we're talking reasonable services for your clients, if your client is ILP eligible, it opens all these services. It also opens up this housing, but if your worker has no idea what's available, when you're arguing reasonable services, you're going to be on, hey, wait a second, I remember that training. There's something about housing, there's something about, oh my gosh, work money, school money, and Marissa will explain all that to you. So if they get ILP services, it's huge.
All information related to ILP is on this website. The website's relatively newer, maybe within the last 3 years. Everything about ILP is there, and I want to say it's pretty easy to navigate. It's important to know that only a transitional coordinator can verify ILP eligibility. We're going to give you like a ballpark of what that looks like, but you should definitely talk to their ILP transition coordinator to confirm that they actually are eligible, and there's many ways that they can contact them. So this is a list of services that they can get through ILP. They can get driver's lessons, funding for college, for work clothes. If they have a closed case, then they can get assistance with moving costs, with finding, with getting things that they need for their apartment. And like I said, that's only while their case is closed, because if their case is open, then they're getting funding through extended foster care, so they wouldn't qualify for that. So they don't necessarily say that here, but I just wanted to.
Let me go back on that. Just because a case is closed, if a child was ILP eligible, we'll give you the criteria. If they were ILP eligible, they still get all these services, even if their case is closed. So it means that you could be pushing for them to be getting these, again, for reasonable services. And the big, like she said, the biggest one is it's money for help with your apartment.
So ILP eligibility, generally, you've had to have a suitable placement order between the ages of 16 to 18.
So if they were under 16, they're fine.
Yeah, except for, next line.
So if they were in legal guardianship, and were getting kin gap between the 16 to 18, they're also good. Now if they were in a non-related legal guardianship after the age of 8, then they qualify for ILP services.
We have no idea why those rules exist.
What does that mean?
So if they were in legal guardianship, so this type of legal guardianship, kin gap is relatives.
Relative.
So we close it, they're going to get relative funding, we call it kin gap. Those are the, when you see they have to sign, the relatives have to sign this form, and everybody's always making a huff, they have to have lived in the relative's home for 6 months before we close it with legal guardianship. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's this, because that's a federal funding. Kin gap is a federal funding that they access. So when we close it, the relative had to have had the kid for 6 months, and then they get access to this federal funding through kin gap. There's also a state kin gap, a little bit different, but it doesn't matter. What you just need to know is they are going to make sure to fight you if your client was, well, let me rephrase that. Just make sure that it was kin gap, the relative, in legal guardianship. If it was that, you're golden. They're going to qualify for ILP. Your client might not know they were kin gap legal guardianship, so you might have to do a little
But if they
calls.
go home a parent on
That's
their
fine.
15th birthday.
Nope, then they don't get it.
They don't get anything.
Nothing.
There's nothing, no services, not just no ILP, no nothing.
So this is why you might see sometimes an attorney for a minor might be like, you guys are saying 15 and 9 months and 70 days, and they're going to be whatever, they're going to be 16. We might be saying to you, oh, let's set it for a contest,
Sure.
right? And this
Or
might,
just continue it.
or continue it.
Sure.
Or maybe you could just do a visit for a few weeks. You guys catch what I'm saying without saying it? All right.
Well, I mean,
And then
I think she actually really said it. You guys should be sensitive to that.
Well, the only reason I'm saying it is because the mother and father now have access to all kinds of
Right.
money for their child to go to college. And that's a lot of money. We're talking $5,000 Chafee grant, money for their books, etc. This one, the weird one, I always think of this one. I always tell people, think families get screwed. If you always think that, then you'll understand what's happening here. Relatives, they're gonna get it. Non-relatives, 8th birthday, if it was after their 8th birthday, you're fine. If you're doing a legal guardianship before their 8th birthday, you've just screwed them out of every single one of those services. But adoption, if they're adopted before 16, they get nothing.
So I'm sorry, so we don't want to legal guardianship before they're 8, or we don't want it?
For a non-relative, before 8, they won't get ILP.
So we want to, if we can, if it's only a couple of months, we should wait until they're 8.
Right. Oh, for you guys, you shouldn't even care because it's a legal guardianship.
But we should be willing to,
Yeah.
we should talk to our
But
clients
I think
about
you guys
being
should keep your
willing
eyes
to-
open for it too.
Yeah,
Because this is going to help your client's child later,
yeah.
right? So keep your eyes open. Remember, when we're talking about this, I'm not talking about reentry or extended foster care. I always want to make sure this is really clear. ILP is this division under Youth Development Services. Extended foster care, we're going to talk about in a minute. ILP are a lot of services. A lot. And I tell everybody, register for ILPonline.org. Register because you're going to get all these things about all these jobs and dinners and everything that your client might be eligible for. All of us are registered. We get blasts about job openings all the time that some of your clients might be able to go to, even if they're not ILP eligible. All right. Oh, and this is also, just so you guys know, ILP is for both probation youth that were suitably placed and dependency.
All right, so transitional housing through YDS. So if your client qualifies, you think, for ILP services, then they'll have access to transitional housing. There's several different types of transitional housing programs based off of their age and details of their case. So the first one is THPP, Transitional Housing Placement Program, that is available for 16 to 17-year-olds. And as you can see here, there's a 6-bed capacity. Not a lot, right? And in reality, there's really only like 2 in the county. So I wouldn't really count on that, but that is available. There's also THP plus FC, Transitional Housing Placement plus Foster Care. This is available only to non-minor dependents who have an open court case. And that is a program where they get usually it's a 2-bedroom apartment that they share with another roommate. They get a stipend for their living expenses. The apartment that they get is fully furnished. And they have a case manager that supports them along with their county social worker. This is, I would say, one of our favorites for a youth that needs some support but can't completely live on their own yet. This is kind of like a good middle ground. And then there's THP Plus. This is available for youth that are over the age of 18. However, the requirement here is that they have to have a closed court case. So maybe they need some support with housing, but they don't necessarily want to deal with their county social worker. This is a good option for them. And it's available, I know it says 24, but like I said, it's available until 25 if the youth the criteria is that they have to be pursuing post-secondary education, and that'll allow them to get an additional year. Instead of 24 months, they'll be able to participate for 36 months or 3 years if they're pursuing post-secondary education. There's also housing services through DMH and through LASA. The criteria there is a little bit different. You would have to go through LASA and DMH to figure out, but obviously DMH, there needs to be like a mental health diagnosis for you to be able to get those types of housing services. And then also we noted here that there's other transitional housing programs. Recently there's, well, not recently, but I think there's always been like the housing crisis here in LA County, but I think myself, I've seen it be more impacted within the last year or two. I don't know what exactly the reason for that is, but we've been having to resort to other transitional housing programs not contracted by DCFS, some community partners that we've come across. I don't know if you guys heard of Women's Care Cottage, Jazz House, Bridge of Faith. These are Dream Center. These are other programs that we've just been resorting to that we've come across through word of mouth, but just know that housing is definitely still an issue now. But there's definitely a lot of resources available to you for your clients.
On a side note, I want you to notice how many beds we're talking about. 82 for THP Plus, 175 through Los Angeles Housing. That came through the Triple H. So if you guys voted for Triple H and Measure H, that's part of this. And mental health only has 50. These are all for closed cases. So we're not talking a lot of beds, so you have to, she'll explain it to you, but just know. So when we talk about doing legislation together and pushing, this is where we can come together and say this is not nearly enough for all of our clients. If you guys can start demonstrating the need and start documenting, we have a better fight to start opening up more beds.
And so through Triple H funding, there's been a new system called Coordinated Entry System, CES. The idea with that was that we're going to funnel all of the people that need housing to this system, and then we're going to match them to housing. Sounded like a great idea, but really in practice, it's been more challenging, but it is a resource that's available. How an individual will access this system is they will go to one of many access points throughout LA County. There's a whole lot. These are just the leads of each spa, of each area within LA County. They would go, they would sit down with the agency, and they would do an assessment that we call the Next Step tool. Based on that assessment, they're going to ask them questions like their demographics, what are the risk factors. It's a pretty lengthy assessment. It takes about 1 or 2 hours. Based on that assessment, they will give them a score. Based on that score, they'll be matched to housing. The higher the score, the more acute, the higher the need. They'll be matched to transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, just any of those options. There's not a real timeline as far as when that match will happen. And of course, depending on which spa you're in, sometimes there's more availability in different spas just because of the funding and the people that don't really access it. I can tell you always in Antelope Valley, there's always more funding. There's more housing available over there because not a lot of young people are willing to live out there. I can tell you Spa 6, South LA, there's heavily impacted. There's a long wait there. And as you can see here, there's 3 different categories of the coordinated entry system. One is for single adults, one is for families, and one is for youth. I recommend if they are a youth to enter through the youth system. That's anyone between the ages of 16 to 25 because it's not as impacted as a family or as a single adults.
So let me stop right there real quick. These people do not have to be ILP or DCFS involved. This is for any of your clients that are homeless. This is the newest, again, this was a response to Triple H. This is what they came up with. How successful? We're still tracking.
Yeah.
But every one of your clients that's homeless should be getting into the CES system. Youth, 16 to 24. So any of your clients that are 16 to 24 should be, if they're homeless or at risk of homeless, they need to do this. And if something changes and they become homeless, get them back over there again. You want to get on them. And you know, for your workers, people that are social workers, you guys can actually attend some of these staffings. I used to go out to the CES meetings, and I'd hang out and see how the whole process went of who picked who to go into which housing.
What's CES?
Coordinated Entry System, CES. So this, go back one, Maris, if you can. Okay, Triple H funded CES, Coordinated Entry System, Coordinated Entry System, and Youth Coordinated Entry System. It was intended for vets, youth between TAY, we call them TAY, between the ages 16 and 24, 25 now. And for anybody that was homeless, this is in response to the homeless crisis. Okay? We have a CES in court. I don't know if you guys know that. You guys know this? You guys, whenever you guys do that, what's that thing we sign off?
The housing order.
Thank you. The housing order. Have you guys done the housing order in court?
Yeah.
That is CES. We push to have them placed into the courthouse.
So CES pays the lady that's in that office.
CES, Coordinated Entry System, is the overarching name of the program. Whatever spa that's over our court is probably paying her bill. Whatever organization she's with.
And could you just in a real quick way tell us what actually is supposed to happen once we get the order and send our client to meet with that lady?
Okay, so a little bit different. So let's make sure we're clear here. That lady is there for one particular thing. Homelessness is the only reason your client is not reuniting. I've been pushing, and I hope you guys join me in this push, that they should have a CES coordinator on campus 24/7 for all of our clients. Somehow, this is the only one that's been approved so far. But just so you guys know, CES should, in my opinion, have an office at the DCF or at the courthouse ready to go.
Why, I thought you said that's who that lady was.
You only have one.
But that's only for people who are in full compliance, and homelessness is the only
Now,
area.
there's a
Well, the housing
rumor.
order I'm talking about does require the parent to be in compliance.
Yes,
Right.
that's
That's only one type of CES.
Right. Jen is saying we could also have a CES there.
A regular
For a client who's
CES for
not
a
in
client that's not in
compliance?
compliance because they can't comply because they're homeless and they can't get it going,
Okay.
right?
Question, talking specifically about the youth.
Right, so
18
16 to 24,
Yeah.
25, yeah.
And how there may be more housing availability for them. Obviously, for us, representing them as parents, we would need to have them be in a place where they could reunify. Is it,
Right.
once they get placed into the youth housing, are they more
Depends.
eligible to?
Yeah, well, yes, definitely. So I think even Jacqueline could talk about that. Jacqueline and I worked together with one of her clients, and I happen to have a connection that we built called Volunteers of America. If you guys have not met with them or got to know them, get to know them. They are just a gift. They're in your packet of resources.
What did they do?
Volunteers of America does everything, everything. They're in quite a few spas. They're on Crenshaw, they're in East LA. They're all over the world actually, but this particular one has programs where they'll run the CES or the YCS, and then they'll look for housing, and they happen to, when I told them we were desperate for housing for young mothers, I'll be darned if that girl didn't turn around within weeks, and they opened the Women's Care Cottage. And one of Jacqueline's clients went to the Women's Care Cottage, and they offered supportive services, a advocate that came along with her. I don't know how she's doing it, it's none of my business, so we won't worry about it. But I'm just saying, this is what they did offer. And I think Marissa's worked with them as well, right?
Yeah, they are. They have traditional housing programs for women, parenting or non-parenting. So they can. Usually, what they'll do is with YCS. The reason we have youth go through that is because they're a little bit more understanding of youth, and they kind of, work with them and help them like navigate the whole housing process. And then if they're able to secure a bed through them, usually they'll get a traditional housing program. If they're not in a parenting bed, then eventually they'll move them into a parenting bed when they do reunify with that.
So get their foot in the door.
Get your foot in the door. And CES, YCES, knows about all of the DCFS transitional housing.
But again, is this only if they were foster youth?
This one is for anybody. Anybody. Singles, families, TAY youth. Yeah, the Triple H was intended to target vets, TAY, 16 to 25, and singles that were all, families that were homeless. This is all, we voted for this, people, hopefully we did.
So how do we get our clients hooked up with CES? Is it figuring out what spot
You
they're
can
in
either
and
do,
referring them
and you
to
have to
that
check this,
agency?
get on this website every once in a while, because these change, because we found out that South LA Hopix wasn't doing a great job. I think they just turned it over to CRCD for youth. So that just recently happened, right? But if you guys are pushing, right, you'll know. But for the easiest way, 211 info line. They do the screening for CES. So you call 211, have the person sitting there and get ready for quite a minute or two of doing it. Or you can have the social worker, how about that, take them to PATH. Take them to the whole child. Take them to Hoviness. How about that for once? I don't know, it's an idea. Set an appointment. Have the social worker do their job here. No offense, social workers, I love you guys, but you know what I'm saying. This is reasonable services right here, if you ask me, for homeless. I want you to know that this existed and none of us were using it apparently. They had YCS co-located workers in all the DCFS offices. Apparently they must not have gotten enough people in the pilot because guess what just closed down? So you could have actually had your client, which DCFS social worker probably didn't even know that they were in the building because they don't even know that ILP is in the building. So most likely they didn't know that these people were in the building, right? So this is no longer here.
Where is ILP in the building?
It's in the DCFS offices. Every office has an ILP working office.
So that first door on the right when you come in the front door?
No, DCFS, at the DCFS office. We have an ILP worker here at court, by the way, guys.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, we do. Andrea
When you
Miles.
turn right, when you go
If you go over there, they'll get her. She actually hangs out in the shelter care. I know, right? Surprise, surprise. So, just so you know,
And we
this
can ask
existed and it
to
went
see
away.
her?
Yeah, I have her email if you guys need it. But just so you know, we should have CES in the DCFS offices for your clients so they can do it right there, or at court. But we don't have it. I don't know why. It disappeared. Apparently we weren't using it. So, all right. CBEST. I put this in here for you guys because I think this is really important. Another answer to the Measure H issue of homelessness was that they found out that a lot of people that were homeless had no linkage to Social Security disability income or their SSI their SSI money, or they weren't hooked up with their cash assistance or their veteran benefits, right? So many people that were homeless didn't know that they had a right to money. So what happened is Triple H came with an answer to that, and they put in each spa. You can pop the next one. Each spa now has a coordinator that can help your client hook up to the funding that is available for them. Not only will they hook them up, they will take them to the SSI meeting, gather their documents, help them set appointments with the doctors so that they can get their SSI. They also, I think it's through Measure H. They also, there's a way that you can actually call in a referral yourself to LASA, and they'll actually send a worker out to wherever your client is if they're experiencing homelessness and there's issues. So just know there's a lot of stuff out here. This in particular I think is huge. DCFS is ordered to take your client to the CBES office, set an appointment with a CBES worker, and then they get hand off. They don't even have to do anything after that. They don't have to gather documents after that, because then the worker at the CBES unit will do it. So this opens up funding for a lot of your clients that aren't getting it. You guys have any questions about CBES?
So now we're going to move on to extended foster care, AB 12. This legislation was pretty much a response to just the bad outcomes that they were seeing among former foster youth, homelessness, incarceration, all of that. And the hope was to help youth, navigate becoming an adult and giving them that extra time to figure things out, to have a support system and a safety net. If they're eligible to get extended foster care payments at the age of 21, they will get the basic rate of $960 that recently went up today. If they're still living in the foster home that maybe they enjoy and they're getting a specialized care rate, such as a D rate or F rate, they'll continue to get that elevated rate too.
So now, mind you again, I'm going to remind you, this is different than ILP.
Yes.
ILP, the whole thing we talked about before, that is one branch called Youth Development Services. They handle housing, transitional housing, and they handle money for college. Think, make it or break it. You're going to make it in college, you're going to make it in your job, we're going to help you with all that. That's ILP, Youth Development Services. We are now back in the DCFS offices.
And
Okay?
extended foster care is now available if they're living with their parents too.
Yes. So just remember, now we've switched over. So every kid that was ILP eligible, that's different. Extended foster care has different requirements, okay? So your client might get ILP, but they might not get extended foster care. So now we're moving to another, we're going into the DCFS office now, okay?
So I'm going to go into the eligibility for extended foster care. If an individual was receiving KINGAP, and again, it started after the age of 16, they will continue to get KINGAP. So that relative will continue to get that funding for the youth until the age of 21. Or if the youth has a disability.
And
Again,
just to make this clear
yeah.
for a bit, because when this all first started, you guys, the kids couldn't be living with their parents. That was one of the conditions under which they would not receive their $1,000 a month. But now there's been new legislation and they can. So there may be people in your courtroom that are saying, oh, they can't live with their parents. No, they can. Okay?
As long as they still have to have been in foster care up to the
On
age
their
of
18th
16.
birthday, yeah.
So remember, now we're doing extended foster care.
No,
So
extended
remember,
foster care, they have to
before I was
bring
doing
in foster
ILP,
care on their 18th.
that's why I always stop. ILP eligibility was the last slide. That was somehow, we'll just close that door. We're now in extended foster care. We're opening up a new door. This is the other kind of funding that's available. So the first one, think home, school, work, and some money for housing through transitional housing. That's ILP and Youth Development Services.
And lots more kids are eligible
Right, that's
for
a
ILP.
lot more kids that might be.
Fewer kids, far fewer kids.
This
are eligible
is
for
really
extended foster.
limited. This is limited, so the eligibility criteria is going to be a little bit different.
And DCFS will do everything they can
Everything they can.
to try to prevent a kid from qualifying for this.
And our judge down there will do everything she can to make sure they qualify. So
Everything she can.
she tries. She tries. You'd be surprised. She really led the charge.
So again, KINGAP, 16 or older, they'll continue to get funding to 21. Non-related legal guardian, it doesn't matter when that guardianship was established. They're more lenient with non-relatives. And adoptive parents, similar to KINGAP, if it happened after the age of 16, they'll continue to get funding, or if they have a verified disability.
So what we're talking about here for verified disability, those are kids that were getting D or F rate. That's special needs. So any kid that receives special needs funding can continue to have funding paid to them until their 21 birthday. But if they take a SILP, they're not going to get the special funds. They'll go back to basic rate. So, but those kids can keep their case open.
Right, and so what do they get out of being a part of extended foster care? I think the favorite, and the one that everybody is hearing or wanting to get, is SILP, Supervised Independent Living Placement, where the youth, the young adult, gets the foster care payment directly to themselves, and they decide to live with maybe a former relative that maybe didn't pass the life scan in the past. Now they're an adult, now they can choose to be with that relative. They can now choose to live with their bio parents. They can rent an apartment with roommates, with a partner, basically whoever, just as long as the actual unit meets basic safety and health requirements. And like Jen said, they're only going to get the basic foster care rate of $960. They're not going to get a higher rate.
But do know, if this person was getting special funds and they stayed in a foster home, right? Your young mom ends up having a baby, but she was a D or F rate, think Social Security disabled, then that person can continue to receive the higher rate, which is close to $2,000 sometimes, in the foster home. They can continue receiving that in a foster home if they want to stay there and take their baby with them.
And also, all these kids qualify for ILP, right?
Right.
Everything in ILP they get, plus all this extra.
Exactly.
Yeah, if they're in extended foster care, they're going to get ILP. But if they're in ILP, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get EFC. And then, of course, they get access to THP plus foster care. That's the difference. The FC means that they have an open court case. And then, of course, they get a social worker. And then if they have a court closed case, then the funding will just continue to go to the caretaker.
Does that make sense to everybody?
And the youth that want to be a part of extended foster care do need to meet a participation requirement. It's one of these 5. Basically, they're going to school, whether it's number 1, getting their high school diploma, 2, going to college, or they're working at least 80 hours a month. The 4th option is they're removing barriers to employment, or they're unable to do so because of a medical or mental health condition. I think what we want to discuss is number 4, because I think that's often overlooked. Social workers tend to say they're not going to school, they're not working, they're not doing anything. We're going to recommend for them to terminate jurisdiction. But in reality, a youth may be volunteering somewhere, they may be participating in a drug treatment program, getting mental health services, and that's part of removing barriers to employment or education, so they can fall into that criteria. Of course, it's not meant to be a criteria for them to meet for the next 3 years, but it is supposed to help them short term until they're able to do one or the other.
And if you need to find, if you have one of those clients that has the kind of weird, they're not doing much, and you want to try to find the excuse, look at the attachment A to the ACL 1169. It gives you every scenario.
Yeah.
And by the time you're done reading it, basically any kid is eligible for extended foster care by the time you're done reading that attachment.
What are some of those examples?
Like she said, drug treatment, internship.
Yeah.
They filled out an application for a job. They filled out their FAFSA. They babysat under the table. It's
So many.
Yeah, so many. But they basically thought of every excuse they could think of and wrote it into the attachment A. So that helps us a lot. We use it a lot in court. Yeah, you do.
So, some extra things that we wanted to point out. For the purposes of FAFSA, if a youth was in foster care anytime after the age of 13, they're considered an independent student. For the purpose of FAFSA, meaning that they don't need to report their parents' income or any of their parents' information, so that'll make them eligible for extra grants and other funding and services for foster youth. If they're, again, between 16 to 18 in foster care, they're eligible for the CHAPI grant, which is extra $5,000 for college. And also, there's been a lot of recent legislation with, like I said, them realizing the need for services, for funding for older youth. And it used to be 22, now it's age 26 that you can get the CHAPI grant.
And foster care means foster care, not legal guardianship. It means foster care. They have to actually be in foster care. It could be relative, it could be anything, but it's not legal guardianship.
But under 16, not even a Chafee grant?
No.
So again, if we close it, or we return the parent to the parent before 16, hint, hint, and your client's hoping their daughter or son goes to college, you might want to wait that extra 3 weeks until they turn 16, so they have 1 day of foster care. Maybe, and maybe not. Maybe not. It's really up to you guys.
It's harder to.
And for the purposes of Medi-Cal,
Get $20,000
under,
worth of scholarships for the kids? There's always going to be
It's not
exceptions.
every year.
No, but it's only one time?
You
No,
only
you get it for,
up to 5 years, $5,000 every year up to
Yeah, so
5
it could
years.
they
be
just
25
extended it.
grand.
Yeah, they just extended it. And they changed the age to 26 now.
There's people who get that.
Yes, former foster youth, current former foster youth.
But you have to have been in foster care. I know, she's giving a look. What's the question?
No, it's not a guarantee.
Not a guarantee, but they fully
No.
funded it recently. So it used to be that most kids, that was really hard to get.
Right.
They now have funded it fully, is my understanding, and now the kids are getting it. It used to be a fight to get the money,
Right.
and they've changed that now, and they've funded it, and they extended the age. I know, because I know, it was a big fight to get it before.
Yeah, generally they would say, oh, you don't expect to get it your first year, but now every student will get it. You do have to, you should be full-time to get the full $5,000. You can get it up to 5 years, and now it's the age 26. Another thing that we wanted to point out was Medi-Cal for former foster youth under the Affordable Care Act. Now former foster youth will get Medi-Cal to the age of 26. Regardless of their income. However, the criteria for Medi-Cal is they had to have had an open case on their 18th birthday. So I know we talked about 16, 8 other ages. For Medi-Cal is at the age of 18, they had to have a suitable placement order at 18 to get former foster youth Medi-Cal, regardless of income. And reentry.
All right, reentry. Reentry, how do you get your client in? Let's suppose your client had no idea that they were part of the foster care system. They closed their case, legal guardianship, they were living with their auntie, they get pregnant, they have a kid gets detained, and all of a sudden you realize your client might actually be able to reenter because they're between 18 and 21. This is the criteria if you want your client to reenter. Eligible youth, you have to, if your youth is between, your youth, I always say youth, TAY. If your TAY is between the ages of 18, go back one more, 18 and 21, they can request to reenter. Those requests are going to be heard in Department 418 normally, but not necessarily because you will have already an open court case with your mother. So the chances are that it will not go to 418. It will probably match up to the courtroom you're already in as with a mother. Good and bad. Good and bad. Depends on how versed your judge is in NMD. Note 602, that's delinquency, and 450s. 450 is this really weird thing that happened in criminal court for juvenile, where they found that youth that had been compliant with their probation, but they were 6 months before their 18th birthday and they weren't going to be going home, they converted into this thing called 450 probation, and that just means that they are being supervised like a non-minor dependent in delinquency. So just so you know, just keep your eyes open for anything delinquency or dependency. 300 minor dependents. So these are the people that are able to reenter. Youth reentering is assigned a social worker or a probation officer. Their job is not to violate. So don't be afraid to reenter them in probation. They are not tasked with that. There is no violation because they're not really on probation. Reentry is voluntary, but eligible youth have a right to request reentry as long as they intend to meet participation requirements. Go to school, fill out an application, whatever. Eligible non-minors who have their case closed can reenter unlimited time. So we get this a lot. They reenter, they close. They reenter, they close because they don't like their social worker. They can reenter and close their cases many times as they want up through the age of 21. So let's suppose they go into transitional housing, the one where you have to close it, and they fail. They can just reenter, reopen their case, and they can go into THP plus foster care, which is the one you have to have your case open. So it's interesting. You can bring them back and forth a few times. So your client can fail, which is really great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the 602s that come in, it's the reentries through our court system?
No, they're going to do it through probation.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but they, I think I threw on there a number on the newer one that I gave you guys. Yeah, I looked it up last night, and this is the reentry phone number, I think. I think this is the current one as far as I can tell. I thought Jed had moved on, but his contact was still the one on the phone number. So it's in your handout.
I know, but I can't read it because I have old eyes.
Oh, sorry, it's
The 800 number?
the 800 for, if you're re-entering as a former prior foster youth, then you can do the hotline. Okay? If you're re-entering through probation, we think the phone number is 213-351-0127. And then he also had a link on his voicemail, and it was for his email, which was probab12@probation.lacounty.gov.
Jen, could you just walk me through this? So let's say, we represent parents.
Right,
So let's talk about the parents for a second.
right, that's where we,
When we represent a parent and they get their kid back right around their 18th birthday, and then the kid wants to re-enter.
are they part of the system before, so they're eligible to re-enter? You're
Yeah,
saying somebody who
yeah.
could-
They're eligible to re-enter, but
Okay.
and when they do that, does that case go to 418?
Not
Or does
likely.
it go back to where they were
Depends on where
before?
the first filing was. So if the first filing was in 413 on the mother as a mom, and then we realize, oh wow, we can re-enter her, most likely that case is going to remain in 413.
So does it reopen as an X file or as the original case number?
No, that has changed completely. They're doing all kinds of weird things. Last thing I saw, I thought it was an 18cc JP, and it was something, so they stopped doing X's, and now
Oh, they
it's,
stopped doing it?
yeah.
But I think like what we're saying here is re-entering our clients, not our clients' children, but re-entering
But we
the
want to know
parent.
about the effect on the parents, because we represent
no,
parents.
we're
So
talking
when you have a kid who's
Yeah.
trying to take advantage of the system, like a lot of us do.
But they would have minors counsel to handle that. So I think what Jen is saying is that if we had a 20-year-old parent who was a former foster youth and eligible for re-entry, we could potentially re-enter them as that parent's counsel if they're eligible.
Right,
Right, and what if their plan is to be living with their parent?
then they could get funded, so.
Right, but we represent the youth, the parent
Parents
youth.
scenario.
The parents.
Well, I
And
mean,
her
sometimes,
parents are the grandparents.
Yeah.
We don't,
yeah.
But I don't think it would impact, like if we represented, say, the maternal grandmother, right? And the mom is trying to re-enter foster care.
Right.
I don't think it would impact the maternal grandmother except that she would have this alternative funding stream because her child's over the age of 18.
Right. Well, and also when the department is trying to send a 17-and-a-half-year-old home, to get them home before their 18th birthday, that's going to affect us because our clients, the parent or the grandparent, the parent/grandparent, that person is going to want to have their kid home. And they're going to be excited they're getting their kid home. And yet at the same time, we need to be advising our client that getting their kid home could potentially cost the kid $65,000.
And it's a horrible way to think, but it is something we counsel, you think about when you're talking to your youth. It's like, I want my kid to go home. My kid wants to go home, I want them to go home.
Right.
I want them to go with their parent. That's my ultimate goal. I'm not going to hold money over them. But at the same time, I don't want, because unfortunately what we see a lot, and this is the truth, is they go home at 17 and 8 months, and then they call us, can I re-enter? Because it didn't work out with mom. This happens Marissa can back me up.
Yeah, no, we
A
know.
huge number of our potential re-entries that we've had to kick out are those kids.
Yeah.
This happens all the time. So the safety net is gone. There is no safety net except for IOP. So don't freak, right? Yes, this is ideal, but if not, hopefully they were IOP eligible, we can still put them into transitional housing through IOP, right? So, like I said, I never tell people to make a decision based on money, but I think it's a very important conversation to have with your client. Hey, if we wait 2 more weeks, I will tell you for a fact, and I saw this for a fact, how many social workers started recommending return at 17 and 10 months.
Right.
And they were nowhere near ready to go home. No question. They hadn't complied, they hadn't done anything. I was horrified at some of the reports I saw. People sent them to me for me to review them. And I was so mad, I brought him to the judge. I said, you better see what's happening. And then there was a bunch of meetings that started happening. That was happening across the board. If you want to know why they're doing that, that is why. They don't want to fund your client's child for extended foster care. So watch that. When you see it, be acutely aware of what they're doing. Be aware. That happened quite a bit. Marissa can back it up. We saw it. It was unbelievable when it first started. How many kids got recommended to go home to a person that was still using with their domestic violent partner. Happened across the board. It was unbelievable. And certain offices were doing it more often than others. They didn't believe in extended foster care.
So for AB 12, if we represent a client as a parent who, say, had a delinquency case, they were never involved with dependency, are they also eligible
Yes.
through probation
Yes.
for AB 12?
Yes, so if the same requirements, suitable placement over 450, suitable place between the ages of, or at, you know, all the criteria we read to you before. Same thing. That's why it's worth asking and then checking to see if they're eligible to reenter. It's worth checking because a lot of our clients, right, did get popped when they were young. Right? That's kind of our reality, right? So yeah, so always ask the question. All right, eligibility, we already talked about that. Oh, you're filing. Either you call the hotline and they'll file the petition, or you can file the petition for your client. Really easy. It's a 388 JV 466. So you can file it for your client at the clerk's office, or you can have DCFS do it. The funding and all that doesn't even start until the social worker meets with them and does a voluntary reentry agreement with them. So you want to make sure it happens quick. If you have any questions about that, there's an email for our team, Extended Foster Care at clcla.org. Marissa can answer any questions. That team is skilled in this. They know all the answers for that if you're having a problem reentering your client.
Also, along with that, we help some of our youth that cold call us and are wondering if they're eligible for reentry. You can give us a call. We can walk them through that process too. I recommend, if you're able to, file that JB 466. We always just do it for every youth. Because if you wait on DCFS, it's going to take them a long time. More often than not, they're going to think that they're not eligible, and in some cases we can make the argument for them. So we just file it on behalf of the youth. That hotline is going to take you forever too if the youth is trying to call. There's no prompt. Press number 2 for re-entry, so they're not going to know what numbers to push. So I think if you're able to do that for them, that's helpful. If you have a parenting youth, I think you want to cover this one first.
Okay. So, have you guys had any training about advocating for youth? A TAPE that's in the system has now had a baby. All the new legislation that came down for this. Guess what? They can't use their old files on them. So, we put in here for you guys the legislation for it all. The only way that they can use the mother's or the father's old file on them, right? They have this mental health history, they were living in group homes and they're crazy and they're, oh my gosh, don't give them back their baby. None of that can come in unless it's relevant to the petition that's being filed.
But it's always relevant because they're always pleading mental health.
And I think you have to be really careful and try to get things knocked out because there's a lot of layers to that,
Is it
right?
delinquency and dependency file, or just the dependency file?
Dependency.
What
I don't
if
know
the
about
entirety of the petition allegation stems from their prior DCFS?
Then I think you have an argument. I think you have to argue it, how much of it is relevant or not, right? But it is the new legislation that came out. It's to protect teen parents that came through the system. How crappy that you did a really horrible job raising them and you turn around and throw it on them because you were DCFS, a bad parent to them. Now you're going to turn around and use it against them because you put them in group homes for 5 years and you couldn't stabilize them, and now you're going to use that against them? Yikes, right? So I put in there the statutes for you guys to look over. I think it's worth looking at because if you do get your client re-entered as a non-minor dependent, all this applies.
Also, are you going to talk about the 2-5?
Yeah, I don't know if I put it in, but you get up to, what is it, 18, 20, 24 months now in reunification for those clients as well. Because guess what? They're kids, they're young. I'd love to see somebody try to argue that a person who came through dependency that's now 25 should also get that. Why not? Let's see ladles get creative. I'm just encouraging you, wow, it's already here, why not try to get it extended? Oh, this poor mom, she's 26, wow, she's 24, she just got the cutoff? Or she's 21, she's 21, she just got cut off, and now they file? Get creative. I haven't had the chance, I wish I could. But I think it's laid out here for you really well. If you look at the reasons for this legislation, I think you could. Is there anything else on this stuff?
So that first paragraph on the previous screen, what code is that located in?
Let's see, where did I put it? Legislature declares that the minor, let's see, legislature declares that the minor parent or non-minor parent shall not be considered to be at risk of. Let me pull it for you. I thought I put it on here.
Thanks.
I was at the end of doing my. Let's
It
see.
says 360, it says it on the thing.
Is that, did I put it on there?
361.8.
Yeah, so, yeah, Betty, flip over for more.
Yeah, it says 360.
And I love this. Really, where did it just go? I just lost it. One more page. There's, dependent parents' files are prohibited from being disclosed to counsel in the child's dependency proceeding or admitted as evidence in the child's dependency proceeding, and then the exception. I hit it hard, and I don't know why I'm giving you this clear, because I'm sure Siddiqui's gonna use it against me the next time we go, but I am
Maybe
so,
today.
I am so soft on prior dependence. I'm so soft on prior dependence, ask anybody. I'm the softest, so. I just wanted to throw it in there for you guys to review and talk about amongst yourselves, because I'm not gonna give people advice on how you can handle those kind of things, but I wanted to throw it in there so you have it.
Thank
So,
you.
You're welcome. Any other ones in there? Is that the end of our process? I think that's it.
There's some extra resources for parenting youth. If you guys want to review that, know that in addition to the $960, if they have a child in their custody, they're reunified, they're able to get an infant supplement, $900, which is way more than CalWorks or any other benefit, $900. And if they create a parenting support plan, they identify an adult mentor and they create some things that this person's going to help them with, they can get an additional $200.
So your NMDs that qualify for that takes them over the poverty line. Just so you know, that was legislation that was intended to take clients over the poverty line.
And that's available up until the age of 21.
Up to the age of 21.
But wait, doesn't that then cost them all sorts of other benefits they could get if they were just under the poverty line?
Possibly. But they're getting these, I don't know how that works for tax. I know SILP is not taxable, so I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't know.
And then the nurse family partnership, if they're first time moms, they get a nurse. There's a doula if someone wants support while they're in labor.
How old for that? What's the cutoff on that, the nurse?
Nurse.
You know what, I've never had anybody ask that. We've always just got it because I think we have clients until 21. I don't know if they might do it older.
I don't think, I think they do older too, but what's important for the referral is that it needs to come before they're 24 weeks pregnant, because they'll support them to prepare for the for labor and all of that, support them during pregnancy, and then up to the child is 2 years old.
On a side note, Amy was our expert in teen parents when she worked at Children's Law Center, which was then Dependency Court Legal Services. But she was known for being the
I was
teen
a teen
mother.
parent whisperer.
Yeah, that was her specialty. So
Now, is that available regardless of whether they were in
we're
foster care on their 18th
Amy's
birthday?
gonna look at that and find out. That's a great question because that
This
could be
is
really helpful.
through public health, I believe, so it's
So
not
might
just
be-
foster youth. They just have to be a first time parent, first time mom.
Well,
Okay, so we wouldn't get that. So
Yeah.
they have to be pregnant, so we
they
would.
would already
Yeah.
have been
So-
here.
I think, yeah, in your
Yeah.
guys' case, that's what they would get. And then just also another recent legislation is, it used to be difficult for some of our parents to wait until they got the $900 because it would take 2 months after they gave birth. Now there's an early infant supplement, they get half of it, but it's additional support to prepare them for that child.
So anyway, that's everything that's in the report. I hope you guys got some out of it. Did we get everything that was in that PowerPoint in 1 hour?